Good evening, everybody. We're here for the local council elections in Rochdale, which take place next Thursday, the 4th of May. As you may know, there are 20 wards in Rochdale, and we're talking tonight about the Milnrow and Newhey ward. I'm Gordon Tilstone. I'm chairing tonight's meeting. So just introductions around the table, as it were, from myself, first of all. So we've got with us Councillor Dave Bamford of the Liberal Democrats. We've got Avis Gilmore of the Labour Party, and we've got Stephen Sharp from the Green Party. There is a fourth candidate who can't be with us tonight. That's Aidan Forshaw from the Conservative Party. So what we'll do first is we'll do some opening statements from each of the candidates, and we'll go in alphabetical order. That's surname order. So we'll start with Dave Bamford if we can. Off you go, Dave.
Good evening, everybody. For those who haven't met me before, I'm Dave Bamford. I've been your local councillor for Milnrow and Newhey for the last 5 years. I was born and raised in the ward. I've run pubs in the ward. I live here and my children go to school here. I'm proud to be a part of the Liberal Democrat team that serves the community as it does. The Liberal Democrats believe a community policy. We believe in listening to residents, campaigning for residents and taking action. We believe in being transparent, open and fair and try to get the best deal for everybody who lives in the wards. I want to continue to be a ward councillor because I believe the Lib Dem team strive hard to deliver on those ambitions. People want basic sorting things. We're living in a time of turmoil and incredible pressure from the hard-working people. Food inflation, crippling energy bills, rising council tax, a failing NHS, and every decision level purpose serving is currently at the community the most. We know because we listen to people who are telling us. The majority of folk want to work or be retired with enough income to pay their bills, take a occasional holiday, eat out for time to time and live a safe community where their kids and grandchildren can go to school. The reality is that we can't fix all of those things as local councillors. There are some things that are responsible for regional and national government, but we can change some things, lobby and campaign for others. I am proud of our achievements of being available, approachable and down to earth with local people. We try to work closely with council officers to get things done, potholes, missing collection bins, clearing fly tipping, fixing street lights, etc. We speak up for people on things like planning matters, antisocial behaviour, school appeals and chasing of housing repairs. We also work with the GP practice to get the new medical centre built. We have supported dozens of community groups.
I'm just going to have to stop you there, Dave.
All right, sorry.
We're just sort of running out of time, so I'm sorry I have to butt in there. So if we can move on now to Avis Gilmore, please. Thank you.
Hi, thanks, Gordon. I'm Avis Gilmore. I'm with the Labour Party. I spent the first half of my working life as an NHS physiotherapist and the second half as a trade union official. And in both of those roles, I've spent my life helping people, advising people, listening to people, representing them and advocating on their behalf. And I think those are all skills that are really essential for a good ward councillor. So I spent my working life gaining those skills and getting huge experience in them. I've lived in Milnrow and then Newhey for the last 42 years. My daughters were born and raised here. They went to school here, but sadly they can't afford to live here. Over the last 5 years or so, I've watched what's happened to the villages. I've seen no sign of investment, no sign of a strategic plan to revitalise our villages. And I look at Littleborough as our nearest neighbour, where the Labour councillors and Tory councillors have worked together on a strategic plan for Littleborough, and they've successfully bid for investment to redevelop the centre, for investment to attract businesses, for sports facilities and equipment, and for an arts centre. I want that for Milnrow and Newhey. And I'm not the sort of person to sit back and just moan. So I've decided I should stand as a councillor for the Labour Party. And having recently retired, I can commit enough time to that role to make it successful. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Avis. If you could just put yourself back on mute, if you wouldn't mind. Thank you very much. So now we'll move on to Stephen Sharp, please. Stephen.
Good evening, Chair. Right. Good evening, everybody. Well, my name's Stephen Sharp. I live in Milnrow. I've lived here for the last 7 years, and prior to that, I lived in Saddleworth in Oldham all my life. I've been 42 years working on the railway. I started as a guard, then a train driver and a station manager. So I've worked a lot of hours at very unsociable hours. But anyway, the reason I'm standing is my wife said to me in January, and I was a member of the Green Party, are you going to be voting at the election? I said, well, if the Greens don't stand, I said, I'll have nobody to vote for. So hence I'm standing for the party. But the real reason I've decided to stand for Milnrow and Newhey is because I think in our community we have got a lot to be positive about. And there's so many voluntary groups in the two villages, like the WI, the Horticultural Society, Disabled Friends, the Wellbeing Cafe, and our own brass band. And they all do a lot of great work. And as a council, I'd like to encourage more of this type of activities by supporting more welfare within the community for these small unnoticed groups like the litter picking group that never gets a mention. I personally, as a councillor, will never stop working to reduce the traffic level and congestion in the villages, which I think is a disgrace, the level of air pollution for all our residents. I would certainly be campaigning long and hard against any future housing development, especially in the green belt. I'd object to every planning application on green belt or otherwise, and even the ones on brownfield sites, unless they're going to put solar panels, heat pumps and electric car charging points in, these properties shouldn't be built. I feel we need a consensus approach to the problems of Milnrow and Newhey. I hope I can answer any questions this season with upfrontness, honesty and integrity. And if I haven't got an answer, I will be honest and say so. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much for that, Stephen. Thank you very much. So we'll now move on to some questions which have been posed by the local community. So the first one's on affordable and social housing. I'm going to ask this of Dave first again. So what specific actions would you take to increase the availability of affordable housing in Milnrow and Newhey? Dave.
Sorry, just unmuting myself. Affordable and social housing. The council policy of building private rental homes run by landlord companies is neither suitable nor affordable. It continues to grant planning permission to these sites that are neither social nor affordable, but just serve to generate council tax. It does not look after the hundreds of Rochdale residents, and I speak as Rochdale as a whole, who are on housing waiting lists. Rochdale Borough Housing has been in the news recently for all the wrong reasons and undergoing some big changes. I believe the council lost oversight of what was going on at RBH. A Liberal Democrat council would work hard closely with the RBH and the social landlords to provide for residents who are already live in the borough, instead of just trying to attract new residents from elsewhere. We would explore how Rochdale Council could invest in housing building instead of leaving it to other organisations. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much for that, Dave. We'll come to you next with that same question, please, Avis. Do I need to repeat the question, or are you okay with it?
It's fine, thank you. I think we've got to set it in some context, really, because, of course, councils are very restricted by government regulations in terms of housing. And I have to say, a Labour government will give councils more powers to deliver the houses that they believe are needed in the respective boroughs. I mean, in terms of Rochdale, and particularly Milnrow and Newhey, there's a clear lack of social housing. There's over 8,000 applications on the waiting list at the moment. But of course, social housing is not owned and managed by the council, but by Rochdale Borough-wide Housing, which is a private company. And as Dave's rightly said, in a bit of turmoil at the moment. I mean, my view is that if that social housing should be returned to the control of councils. Affordable housing is a somewhat different issue, and it's certainly an issue in Milnrow and Newhey. I support the council's decision to prioritise brownfield sites. I absolutely would oppose building on any kind of green belt or our green spaces. But I think we do need some additional housing. And I'm pleased that the council's looking at a mix when they do build of affordable rented properties, affordable properties to buy, and also looking at shared ownership schemes which help people to get on the property ladder. And I support all of those initiatives. What I do think personally is that with any new building plans, I would want to see an assessment of the impact of new house building on the existing roads, on public transport, on GP services and schools, and I would want to see carbon zero houses being built as well. We shouldn't have more houses without the infrastructure to support them, is where I'm coming from. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that, Avis. And on to you, Stephen, with that same question, please.
Well, I think the situation is a lot deeper than that. This goes back to the Thatcher era of when we sold off a lot of, they were forced to sell council housing stock off, and it's never been replaced, and councils were never allowed to spend that money to build new housing. But parking that aside, that's 40 years down the track. We are where we are. Personally, I would like to ask any councillor who's on Rochdale Council or anywhere, they go, when is enough enough? How much more house building are we going to be doing, period? Because the infrastructure in Milnrow and Newhey, I don't think we can stand anymore. We've got a station at Smithy Bridge, away at Small Bridge, Smithy Bridge, where you can't park another car. So this housing development at Birch and Lee, which the majority of it is 3 and 4 bedroom luxury housing, is yet again going to be putting more traffic down Kilnroy and on the Elizabethan Way. You've a tram stop that's got no more parking, so that's just going to be more traffic again. And the question nobody ever seems to answer is, what do people class as affordable housing? Because if you're going to start housing at 150, 160,000 starting salary, it isn't affordable. We need to be reusing the housing we've got, bringing housing stock that's dilapidated back into use, and repurposing buildings for other things. You've got a place near Gordon Riggs, that Kingsway, it's been derelict. I don't know. Why is that not being converted into apartments? Do we have to keep rebuilding and building and building? And we should be making the building we are doing eco-friendly, sustainable and renewable.
Thank you very much for that, Stephen. So we'll move on to our second question. I know you're probably going to cover, between the three of you, you'll cover various topics along the way. So like Stephen just did with the roads and congestion there, but we'll try and continue with the questions as they are. So this is about antisocial behaviour and policing. So I'm going to go to Avis first with this one, and then to Stephen, and then to Dave, if that's okay. So how would you work with the police and local community groups to improve community safety and thinking about antisocial behaviour alongside that? So to you, Avis, please.
Thanks, Gordon. Well, I'm absolutely clear from the nearly 2,000 people that we've spoken to on the doorstep over the last month that antisocial behaviour is the major problem in Milnrow and Newhey. We've had horrendous stories of littering, dog fouling, the keying of cars on the streets, and particularly the reckless and dangerous speeding. It seems like Kiln Lane and Dale Street are part of some kind of race circuit that's used every night. And Huddersfield Road in Newhey is, of course, a long straight road where drivers see the straightness and just put the foot down and go. And one of the things that I would like to do in conjunction with the police is make the case for a speeding survey. That's been done across in Littleborough and Wardle by the Labour and Tory councillors there working together. And they've then successfully bid for the cost of subsequent traffic calming measures that have been advised as a result of that survey. And they've got that money from the Pennines Township. So that's a really practical thing that I would like to do in conjunction with the police in Milnrow and Newhey. I mean, I think it's difficult. I do appreciate that antisocial behaviour is really difficult to police at the moment. By the time the police arrive, perpetrators have long gone. A Labour government will put more police officers back on the beat and have guaranteed a named officer and a community support officer for every community. I think antisocial behaviour in particular makes our streets and public transport very unwelcoming for women and girls. I was really proud in 2002 to work with the council and with the police chief superintendent Nikki Porter, along with Transport for Greater Manchester, on an event we titled Keeping Our Borough Safe for Women and Girls. And I hope to be following that up again this year, because I think that's really important work as well. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Avis. Over to you now, Stephen, with that same question, please.
Well, again, this is a deep-seated problem nationwide, isn't it? A lot of this comes back from the austerity when the Conservatives and Liberal coalition got rid of all those 10,000 police officers and have the audacity to now jump up on the news and say they're replacing 10,000 police officers. All we're going back to is where we were 10 years ago. We've had a decade of lack of policing. But talking locally, I think community policing is going to have to be the way we've got to go forward. And we've even if you contact the police, there's nowhere even in Milnrow and Newhey are local. They're having to come from Rochdale. So as has been stated, the perpetrator of these offences are long gone. I do think we're going to, whether people like it or not, you're going to have to spend some money and invest. And we need to have some proper universal spaces and recreation areas for young people areas. We need to improve the streets and ensuring that public feel safe in the streets, better street lighting, increasing caretakers, attendance. I mean, none of these railway stations and Metrolink places have got any staff on now. So you've got youths and people just hanging around making a nuisance of themselves. And we do overall need to be looking at a concerted effort to have drug-related crime. My final point, which is a personal point, is employing police on these PCSOs, which, without sounding disrespectful, they've got the nickname of plastic policemen. They've no direct powers of arrest. I would rename them as community liaison officers. They should be based in the community, in a hub, in the library or something, and get involved in the community. We need to educate and invest and do something locally rather than just keep shrugging our shoulders and saying, well, it's just not good enough. Well, we all know it's not good enough, but we do need something doing and seriously doing here, because like it has been mentioned before, these boy racers riding up and down the village at night is just getting reeling out beyond a joke. And that's about my say on that.
Thank you very much for that, Stephen. And to you, Dave, with that same question, please.
Antisocial behaviour, the vein of my life. As a ward council at the moment for Milnrow and Newhey, I do spend quite a lot of time what people don't see at night time running up and down, where we're getting calls from areas like, say, Huddersfield Road, where we did a speed assessment not long ago with the local PCSOs, on Huddersfield Road to try and reduce the speeding. We've been in the village outside on Newhey Road across from the park, and it's a really big bugbear that all these cars are flying around like it's a racetrack. I get that. So we're running campaigning constantly, running around making sure to try and reduce that. Also, we have a lot of antisocial behaviour in different areas of groups moving around, and I go out with the PCSOs. And all due respect, I know, Stephen, you said about the plastic, and they do get cold. But our local PCSOs are very active with us, and what they need from anybody watching tonight is more people reporting to 101, because the more evidence and the more phone calls we get coming in to the police, then we can get more facilities put in place. We can't do it if a lot of people are scared of saying or phoning up and saying we're not getting through. Even if you go on the website, report it. Just say report it, emphasize report it. Yeah, and then we can get if we need to put out there, because if it's not reported, we can't do any analytics and give us any funding. Yeah, and we'll keep on going for it all the time, and I really do. It's one of my bugbears on social media, so you will see me out and about in the middle of the night. Yeah, so that's my point on that. Sorry.
Thank you very much for that, Dave. Thank you very much indeed. So the next topic we've got is roads, congestion and transport, which you've all sort of slightly covered along the way, but we'll just take the question as it is. So what steps would you take to reduce congestion on the roads in light in the ward, in light of the new build properties in Littleborough, which will greatly affect our roads due to the motorway access from Milnrow at junction 21 onto the M62. So we'll go to Stephen first on this one, if we could, please, Stephen.
Well, I think we need to be reducing the speed limit in the village to start with, on Dale Street and Bridge Street. That would reduce a lot of this bad congestion. But I mean, we need to. The basic reason that we're getting a lot of congestion, we need to stop building housing, and the houses that we are building need to be accessed to public transport. The ones at Birchingley Manor, no one's going to tell me because there's no bus or anything up there. So that's another load of cars that's going to be going up there. There's no sort of talk of now building on Axo Chemicals at Littleborough, 146 houses. They ain't going to be walking there, and Littleborough Station's chock-a-block. I can guarantee you, because I used to drive trains through there. So we need to be doing something seriously about this. We need to also be taking measures to stop people indiscriminately parking all over the village, especially around the schools at school picking up times. You've got the other issue, of course, that needs to be addressed, I think, which is the Isaac Newton Way situation. You've got all the wagons coming off there that are either piling through Newhey to Yodel or again through the village. And there needs to be really does need to be a freeze now, I believe, on any further development of road building or housing in Milnrow and Littleborough, because we're just chock-a-block. It's just unsustainable. It's bad for public health. It's bad for public fumes, and it is just unlivable. Plus the fact it's wrecking the roads we have got, and the ones around Dale Street and Bridge Street, the potholes now are just unbelievable.
Thanks very much for that, Stephen. Come back to you, Dave, again on this one. Roads, transport, congestion, please.
Cheers, Gordon. When I tell people in the region I'm from Milnrow, people often go, "Oh no, I know that. I drive through there when I'm going to Onruff Lake, Littleborough, Todmorden, and Bridge, basically." Yeah. All traffic that goes through the area squeezes a 20-foot gap at the bottom of Kill Lane in order to get elsewhere. Building thousands more luxury houses in Littleborough doesn't help the residents of Milnrow and Newhey. In no particular order, I believe we need to improve the following. Make the Metrolink safer by introducing conductors and security on trams. Work with schools to come up with new and creative ways of reducing cars around the school runs. Encourage walking and cycling. We need to review the bus services to and from the village. We need to reduce car use, encourage walking, like I said before, and cycling. Yeah, that's as much as I can say on that.
Thanks very much for that, Dave. Over to you, Avis, on that one as well, please.
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I absolutely agree with everything that Stephen and Dave have just said. I mean, it's impossible to drive through Milnrow at any kind of rush hour time. You absolutely see the congestion of people driving to and from Littleborough and the lake. Stephen's right about the HGVs travelling to shore, particularly Yodel. It's a constant stream, and I think both right that they're doing massive damage to the road. We've also got the fact that, of course, Huddersfield Road is the only viable diversion every time the M62 closes between 21 and 22. It doesn't matter which way it's closing. They're directed either up or down Huddersfield Road and then across Newhey Road to exit 21. So, I mean, driving through Newhey on those days is just impossible. but I think when your question was, what would I do about it? I think that's not an easy answer. I think it's something that needs a professional investigation, because the roads are not suitable for the amount of traffic that's on them, and I think some of the junctions are not helpful in the way that they're laid out. And the way that they work. So it does need something more professional than what are essentially lay people as councillors looking at it. And I agree with Dave that one of the really crucial things is to try and reduce the number of cars that are on the road. It means that we've got to have regular, affordable and reliable public transport. And that's not something that we've got. And as Stephen says, it's got to be easily accessible so that people can walk to it. The parking around both the tram stops, Milnrow has got a few parking spaces. Newhey hasn't got any parking at all. But the residents in the streets around both of those tram stops are having a horrendous time. They are from 8 o'clock in the morning till 6 o'clock at night. All of those small roads around both tram stops are absolutely, completely chocker. The only positive thing I can say is that, of course, the Labour Mayor of Greater Manchester, along with the 10 local authorities, have already capped bus fares. And within 2 years, will have the responsibility for setting not only fares, but timetables and routes. And I very much hope that we'll get some of the bus routes back that disappeared when all the deregulation took place years ago. And then, of course, eventually the B network will be a fully integrated network with the buses serving the tram stops and the train stations as well. So in the future, I think there are some hopeful things, but certainly something on a more professional basis needs to be done at the moment. Thanks.
Thank you for that, Avis. So we'll now move on to a question about education. So this says, how would you ensure that every child in Milnrow and Newhey has access to good quality education? Thinking in terms of potential new schools or academies in the area. I'll come to Dave first on that one, if I can, please. If that's all right.
Cheers, Gordon. Cheers for that. Well, we're fortunate to have 5 primary schools, a high school in the wards, should I say. Most years, the admission problems, although we do deal with it instead of on behalf of the parents, we do get a lot more. And I know Lickleborough have more problems than we do with people travelling over from Smallbridge, Wardle. Lickleborough, I know they're looking at the new high school and the primary school. If needed, then we can campaign for a new school, but I don't think we need it at the moment. There's enough to go around in our ward. Very fortunate, to be fair, really fortunate. Yeah. So, but as long as our local children are in the local primary schools and high schools, that's mainly what I'm here for. And if anyone needs to speak to us, they can do.
Okay, thanks very much for that, Dave. We'll come to Avis next, if we can, on that question of education, please.
Yeah, thank you. I mean, again, I think there's a context that has to be considered, and that's that after 13 years of a Tory government, the majority of schools right across the country, schools and colleges, have been taken out of local authority hands and placed in the hands of private companies, academies and free schools. And these, I mean, they've got the ability to set their own admissions policies, exclusion policies, and a whole host of other policies that do affect parents' abilities to I say choose the school. Parents don't choose the schools. They can put a bid in for a school place, but the schools choose them. So I think we're in a difficult position again there. And yet, despite all of that, it is the local authority's responsibility to ensure that every child in the borough is educated. I agree with Dave. I'm not sure that it's a massive problem in Milnrow and Newhey at the moment, but if it is a problem, we're still facing the difficulty that the local authority cannot build a school. It cannot insist on an existing school expanding. It's got to go through a whole privatised bidding process that private companies will have to bid for. So it's not a straightforward issue should that become a problem. But in terms of education, I mean, there's a shortage of teachers. And one of the things that I think Rochdale is doing really well is that our Labour Council are working with a school-centred teacher training agency who's based in Rochdale to train teachers within Rochdale to try and help with that shortage of teachers, because the government has missed its own teacher training targets now consistently for several years. And the council have also received £2.3 million to spend over 3 years to increase attendance, to increase literacy, and to get better outcomes in English and maths at GCSE. And they're working with the Department of Education to work on the plan to deliver that. I mean, whilst we're talking about education, I would also like to say teachers are on strike today. And having worked for the NUT, National Union of Teachers, and the National Education Union, I know what a hard decision that will have been for all the teachers across the country, but particularly in Milnrow and Newhey, who are dedicated to the education of their pupils. But the situation that teachers are working in is a really difficult situation. Vacancies are at an all-time high, and teachers are providing many of their own resources, as well as providing uniforms and food for some of their pupils who are suffering in this cost of living crisis. So I just want to wish all the teachers out there on strike today the very best of luck, and you've got my full support. Thank you.
Thanks very much for that, Avis. If you could just mute yourself again, please. Thank you. And over to you, Stephen, on that question of education, please.
Well, I've got a slightly vested interest as my wife just retired after 35 years as a head teacher in probably one of the most vulnerable schools in Oldham. So I've got a very first-hand experience on the problems teachers have got. And I can assure you now, she was a very dedicated teacher and she wouldn't go back tomorrow. She's absolutely, like a lot of them, they're absolutely worked to death. The people have no concept of the hours they do outside of work. She used to spend every Sunday preparing a full week's programme for the rest of the teachers. They live in absolute fear of this Ofsted because they just really are just unfit for purpose. I can assure you of that. The ridiculous things they ask for them. I think teaching's gone far too much data-based. It's all statistics instead of just doing the basics of what we should be doing, which is educating children. I feel that this academy system is an unmitigated failure. They're just a complete thiefdom to themselves. They just run their own agenda. They've got their own budgets, and it's as much as what they can or can't get out of it. Locally, I feel that we should be encouraging children to walk to school more. The only my disappointment is the amount of cars you see parked, certainly where I live, up round Prosgates Primary. And I'm not being awful. We live 400 yards away, and I see parents getting the car out to drive round there. I think, really, could we not be educating children to walk a bit more? The same round Holly Eye at night. The bus can't get through. You've got to drive through the village because you can't drive through the estate to get home. I think that's something we need to be looking at and speaking to the schools with as well. And I just feel that education itself is a national problem. I quite agree. But I do think locally we need to be educating or encouraging schools to encourage children to cycle or walk to school. And we certainly need to be taking cars out of the equation. And like Avis has said, I think we should support teachers and appreciate what they do, not only in the classrooms, but what they do outside of the classrooms, over and above, which is all done just literally gratis and freedom because of the love of the job and the commitment. Because people like people in the NHS, that isn't a job, that's a vocation. You do it because you want to do it and you love educating children. And I think it's been treated certainly by national politicians. They just traded on people's good nature.
Thanks very much for that, Stephen. Thank you very much. This next question's talking about the local economy and services. So I'm going to go to Avis first on this one. How would you support local businesses to thrive and grow in the area?
Thanks, Gordon. Well, as I said in my introduction, I would like to see our villages become really vibrant places, both for us as residents and also to attract visitors. I think when I first moved to Milnrow, I could do my full weekly shop in the precinct. There were coach parties arriving at Dale Mill, and there was a lovely cafe in Ogden. So it wasn't just for residents, it was attracting visitors as well. And I'd like to see a long-term strategic plan for Milnrow and Newhey that includes make us a vibrant community, sports and leisure facilities. I'd like to see a youth zone. We were talking about antisocial behaviour earlier. We need to combat that and keep our youth engaged in positive activities. And I'd like to see investment to capitalise on visitors to our beautiful green spaces and countryside. I don't know that I've got all the answers. I don't imagine that there's only me can think of things. I've spoken to many residents who've got really brilliant ideas to improve the villages. One of the things that I would do, and I think it would make a difference, is to press for the area forums to be reconvened, something that our present councillors don't seem very keen on doing, so that everybody's ideas to improve the villages and to improve the economy in the villages can be discussed, they can be properly talked through and thought through, and then where it's appropriate, taken forward by councillors as a bid for funding through the Pennines Township and through the council. Thanks.
Thanks very much for that, Avis. Come back to you on that one, Stephen, please.
Well, I mean, it's like everything else. A lot of places are in a state of poor state because obviously rents have gone up, council tax, etc. And obviously due to the pandemic, a lot of people have moved to online shopping. So that's not helping so small businesses, is it? Unfortunately, I think the precinct yet again has got another vacant shop again because the rents are too high. But I think a lot of everybody's seen that film about called The Bank of David about Burnley. I do think we should be looking in Rochdale at forming some sort of community banking or certainly some credit union to help those on lower incomes and less. And like they've done in Brixton, they had the Brixton pound where you could have local currency which you could spend in local shop and get credits. The businesses could then use those credits against their council or business tax rates. So it was getting recycled in the local economy. It was helping businesses because they got a discount for that. And I think if you're going to encourage people, even smaller businesses that we have got, we're going to have to make those sustainable and let them grow to start with, and then look at hopefully attracting new businesses. But if you're going to attract new businesses, they're going to have to be sustainable, and we're going to have to invest to gain, if you know, we're going to have to spend some to gain something. You can't just keep asking a business to start from scratch and ask them for a full council tax and stupid, ridiculous rents like some of these private companies are doing now. They're going to have discounted rents or so many 3 months rent. And the council are going to have to come to the table a bit here and say, OK, we're going to give you 12 or 18 months business rates through the government scheme. You've got to encourage people. And the only way we're going to encourage them is by giving incentives that are realistic incentives, not gimmicks like we have done in the past, like help out to eat out. Well, yeah, that helped out big corporate businesses, but I don't think it did a lot for small businesses around Milnrow and Newhey. So I think we need to look very, very local and try and encourage people to buy local as well. I mean, we've got the problem, other than the Co-op and Aldi, our nearest supermarket's Morrison's. We've nothing else, have we? We've no proper little butchers like you used to have, or a greengrocers, because they've just all gone. And it's a very, very sad reflection, I think, on British society, and it doesn't do a lot for our local residents.
Thanks for that, Stephen. And over to you, Dave.
Thanks, Gordon. Just a couple of things. Having run my own business in the village for 20 years, having pubs, I know how hard it is, and I empathise with the actual businesses, Stephen, regarding the butchers, the thriving butchers in the village. You know, it's Roy's Butchers, God bless him. There is shops shut around, which is, yeah, it is disappointing. The rates have gone up. A lot more people. It's easy just to tap on the phone now and just order it, and there's a company and deliver it to your house, and food. You know, you can get from anywhere now. You don't have to leave your house. So it's hard, but we really, really need to encourage the businesses, help them as much as we can in any avenue which we do. Which I tend to, if they want to call me, we'll try and do something we can. Avis, just going on to the sports centre, I fully agree, and I wish we had one. You know, we've got Dale Mill. We've tried to CPO a few times to make a sports centre. One of your fellow councillors, John Bungdell, actually turned around and said we couldn't have a sports centre for every inch of the borough, and refused. You know, it's like, no, you're not going there. So we're like, right, okay. I do know one of my colleagues has met your husband. Yeah. They were talking about the forum. And I'm like, well, okay, then what's that about? He met you with your husband talking about the forum. We turn up at every single forum. It was voted in township, the Pennines Township, that we wouldn't have the forums anymore because our forum from Milnrow and Firgrove, forget about Newhey because that were added, the Firgrove councillors couldn't even attend. The Labour Firgrove councillors, they couldn't attend except for myself and my colleagues was there as a Lib Dem party. Every single meeting. Yeah. So I'll leave that one with you. Thank you, Gordon.
Thanks very much for that, Dave. So we'll move on to the next topic, which is, I think we're not doing badly for time, environment and the green belt. How would you work with local residents and community groups to promote environmental awareness and encourage sustainable practices? I'm going to come back to Stephen on that one first of all, please.
Well, I think we've got a fair bit of green belt in Newhey and Milnrow, but I think the biggest gripe for me is the amount of building we keep getting on it. And you've got to say, we've got a Labour councillor who obviously keeps signing off on this. I don't think these planning officers are spending anywhere near enough time looking at the infrastructure and the impact of this building of new houses. Like I said, we've got this Birchinley Manor scenario now, and I've heard a whisper that they're actually talking about putting another road through the side of Crossgate School. Whether that's true or not, I don't know. I've only heard that hearsay from 3 or 4 people. You've got the other situation, like I said, looking at Axo Chemicals, and that's just 2 new build developments that are going on as we speak. We've had a new doctors built. I'd like to know what they're going to do with the old doctors, going back to a previous point. If we're looking for a gym and a sports centre, could we not repurpose that building? Because that's the thing. Instead of keep building everywhere, can we not be repurposing building? And the building we are doing should be renewable, sustainable, and, of course, green. We can't just keep putting more cars on the road, no further infrastructure without developing what we've got, because our local environment is just frankly getting choked. I would just pick on one point that Councillor Bamford said about putting conductors on trams. Well, to be fair, that's never going to happen, I can rest assured. I was up the railway when we closed the Oldham Loop, as it was then. We lost 14 drivers' jobs and 14 guards' jobs. We had no service up here for 4 years while they rebuilt it, and it could have been rerun as a railway for a quarter of the cost it costs to that. We could have had it double track from Milnrow to Rochdale, and you could have staff booking offices on all stations. So I'm afraid the Metrolink was an idea that was brought in, and it's always been to run on the cheap. That's why they have no booking offices and they have no guards. How much Metrolink money they must lose through revenue, people not paying, I dread to think. But I just think we're going to, and again, we'd have had the trains running, you've had a far more capacity than we've got on trams, because it is about 24 to 28 seats per carriage and everybody else is standing up. It's a long time to stand up to Manchester at 42 minutes when the train used to only take 22. So I think that's where we've really missed the trick there. But that's a sideshow as such. But I think we need to have sustainable public transport, reliable public transport, safe public transport. I can assure you now, I won't put my wife, daughter, or mother-in-law on a tram after 6 or 7 o'clock at night, because we're back to the antisocial behaviour, which is all interlinked, isn't it? We need to really be thinking about ourselves as an environment and what we are going to be doing to improve that environment for our own residents and for the whole of Rochdale and the whole of Greater Manchester, I believe. It's all interlinked.
I'm just going to attempt to answer that question because we seem to have lost our chair. I mean, the question was, how would you work with community groups? And I think, the sensible answer is any community groups that are available. I'm interested in the environment and maintaining our green belt. I absolutely would work with, and I would work with them whether I was elected as a councillor or not. I think we're really lucky in Milnrow and Newhey to be living so close to the open countryside, but we're also lucky to have a council which I would say, in contrast to Stephen, is actually working quite hard to protect it. I know that the council is delivering alongside schools the promise that every child will plant a tree in 2023, and are looking at looking at preserving wetlands, which are obviously an effective source of carbon capture. And the Labour Council have appointed a senior planning officer to work on the climate change team. But I want to talk a little bit about what we've discussed within the Milnrow and Newhey Labour Party. We've discussed climate change and the environment on a number of occasions, and we've invited expert speakers to come and inform those discussions as well. We've passed within Milnrow and Newhey Labour Party resolutions which we've put onto the council, asking for school streets. I think Stephen spoke previously about the parking around schools. It's about reducing the amount of parking around schools, and particularly reducing the number of people who sit with their engine running whilst they're waiting to pick their children or grandchildren up as well. We've asked for a reduction in the speed limit, not only on the local roads, but for 60-mile-an-hour speed limit on the motorways as they go through Milnrow and Newhey. We've got a motorway that runs right past the park, right past elderly persons' bungalows, and I know the air quality is monitored. It's within limits, but it's on the edge at times. There's been a successful trial on the M602 into Manchester, and I think we should be pursuing that on the M62 as it goes, and the A627M as they go through Rochdale, but particularly Milnrow. And personally, I would like to see every project, every piece of work undertaken by the council to have a climate change impact assessment before it's actually agreed and actions taken to go ahead, and notice taken of that impact assessment. And finally, just on the environment, I'll slip in a bit about public transport, but we've discussed that previously. I think public transport is absolutely essential to combating climate change and protecting our environment. The final thing that I wanted to say was around electric vehicle charging points. I've been asked about that on the doorstep on a number of occasions, whether there are any plans for Milnrow. And having asked about it, I understand there is a plan evolving for electric vehicle charging points right across Rochdale, but none are planned in for Milnrow and Newhey. And I understand that's because our present councillors haven't engaged with the process. I can honestly say that if I was elected as a councillor, I would be engaging with that process.
Thank you, Avis. Thank you, Avis. Can I just double check? Did everybody answer that question? Our previous chair has had a power cut, and so can't come back on. Bless him. So, has everybody answered that previous?
No. No, yeah.
Who's next?
Me, Dave. Good evening, Yasmin. Yeah, just going back to 11. Obviously, the Lib Dems fully support the Save the Green Space. We've been long-standing campaigners of that. Brownfield first. I know you probably won't want to hear that, Stephen. But we're trying to save the green space. Avis electric charging points. I'd love to have them in the village. And if you know where I can go to get them, because I do have an electric car, by the way. So I'd love to have them, because at the end of the day, we need them. We do need them, be great to have them at the tram stop, more parking space, try and get some more parking space at Newhey tram stop so people can plug in there, or the school, whatever we've got to do, any shopping areas. I'd love to support that. I got it. Yeah, I'd love to support that. So it's kind of, yeah, we do environment green. We are green. We are environment. I did buy an electric car because I thought I'd try and walk around more, cycle around more. I wish more people had worked with us to do it. Yeah. I can't say much more because it's the same as what we've been campaigning for the last 12 months and what we're trying to do. So anything what we actually, someone says we're not doing as councillors, you need to get your facts correct. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that. Sorry I disappeared there. Unfortunately, we had a power cut at the house for some bizarre reason. So luckily it's come back on. So I have missed a little bit there, but I think we can now move on to the next question, which is about the clean air zone. We'll go with Avis first on this, I think. So how do you plan to ensure that the voices and concerns of the local community are heard and taken into account when making decisions about the clean air zone? We're talking about clean air zone realistically in Manchester, aren't we? To Avis, please.
Yeah, well, first of all, let me say that I think the original proposals for the clean air zone were not very good, not well thought out, and they were presented in haste and badly. And I think at least we can say that the public outcry about the charging particularly did immediately lead to the Greater Manchester Combined Authorities, all 10 authorities, withdrawing that proposal and stating that they were going to look at it again. I think the position that we're at the moment is that the government are insisting that they will not accept a plan that is entirely without charging. But I am absolutely assured that Rochdale will not be part of any charging system. And that's accepted by the Greater Manchester Combined Authority as well. I think my personal point of view is that we're going about we're going about trying to rectify the damage caused by car emissions. And that's not just exhaust emissions, it's emissions from the tyres, from road use as well. I think we're going about it in the wrong way. I think the government is pursuing a regime of punishing people and taking money off them. And what they should be doing is actually giving financial and other incentives to go green. Dave said he's got an electric car. I've got a hybrid. I think they're really expensive cars to buy. And I think there should be some subsidies, some encouragement for people to move away from very old petrol and diesel cars and move towards either hybrid or electric vehicles. There should be incentives for people to have solar panels and all the other things that we know will help the environment. And it should be incentives and help, not punishment and fines. Thanks.
Thanks for that, Avis. I'll come to you, Dave. We'll go to you next on this.
Dave, we'll go to you next on this. Yeah.
Thanks, Gordon. Just to clarify a couple of things here, we actually worked for over a year and on a £1 million bid for the village of Milnrow to have cycle lanes, traffic calming, electric charging points in, all done, all designed to find out that the Transport of Greater Manchester blocked on us. So we have been working on things around to do traffic calming, electric charging points, cycle areas, but the Labour Council won't let us in. They will not give us anything. Probably just like when Alan Brett actually blocked me. If I got 100 seats, we won't get a spend in Milnrow and Newhey on the roads. Do you know? It's evident. I'll leave it at
Okay, thanks for that, Dave. And to you, Stephen, on that question, please.
Well, I've always said that history's a great teacher. And about 15 years ago, they came up with a congestion charge for Greater Manchester that was flatly rejected by everybody. So while we've gone round the same circle again with this car clean air zone, people aren't going to vote for another taxation. And it's not even a carrot and stick situation. This is just stick again. It's no good telling people to get out of cars because a lot of people can't afford to get out of these older cars. So what we need to do is educating people, investing in them. I mean, I've got a hybrid car and got an electric car on order, which will be in a couple of months, which is great and fine. But not everybody can be affording to spend 25, 30, 40,000 pounds on an electric car. So there needs to be some serious incentives and some serious discounts. I mean, the first thing any government with any sense would have done was at least take the VAT off cars that are electric, which would have been a 20% saving. All these police, council and public services like the health service, why are they not leasing electric vehicles for everything other than obviously buses and bin wagons that obviously can't be on electric? But all these vans that everybody's running around in and that, why are we not, and lead by example? That's the main thing, isn't it? You're not going to get a change overnight. And I think people accept that. And you're going to have to show people the way a little bit. But I do think we need to be looking at getting clean air, period. Because in the 50s, we had pea soup fogs because we were burning that much fossil fuel and pouring it into the atmosphere. But we've learned that. We've cleaned up rivers. It's not, it's not rocket science, this. But I do think we need to start somewhere. We need to start being positive. And I think we need to be positive by leading by example and educating people or trying to encourage people as well by incentives and helping them to make this change. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks very much. I've lost my way a little bit, so I'm not sure. Have we heard from everybody on that question? Or I think we have we? Am I right? Yeah. Okay. Right. Moving on then swiftly because we've only got a couple of minutes left, and I want to give you time just to do a bit of a closing statement. So, just in terms of independence, thinking about independence of yourselves and the, how would you make sure that you're giving a voice to local community and specifically, a sort of a bit of a yes or no. Would you be willing to vote against the party whip if your party has one? So if I could, we'll start with Avis on that one, first of all, please.
Yeah, the role is to represent the residents of the borough. So yes, I would vote against the party whip if that was necessary.
Thank you very much for that. Very short and sweet and direct. Thank you. And Dave, on to you with that one, please.
Oh, sorry, on mute. Short and sweet again, just like Amy said. It depends really, because we make the policy only being three of us. So we tend to discuss things as people do know we're a good team to working together.
Thanks for that. And Stephen, please, on that one as well.
Well, the Green Party don't have a whip, so I would just be totally a free agent. I would just say what I wanted, when I wanted it, and whether they liked it or they didn't. My only interest would be if somebody came with a genuine concern in Milnrow, I would bring it up, and that would be it. They'd get absolute independence from me. It'd be like having a Milnrow and a Newhey independent as well, really.
Yeah. Okay. Right.
Gordon, you're still on mute.
Apologies. I've done it to myself. Oh dear. Right. The old online muting. Yes. Just to say, before we come to closing statements, just to remind everybody that our fourth candidate, Aidan Forshaw for the Conservative Party, couldn't be with us tonight. So that's why you're only seeing 3 people on screen. So we'll just come to closing statements. So we'll go in the same order we started off with. So if that's all right. If we could just give you about 45 seconds, maximum 1 minute. If we come to you first, Dave, please, on that one. Thank you.
Well, thank you.
As we haven't got a lot of time, I'll quickly speak. I just want to keep doing what I've been doing over the last 5 years. As a lot of people in the villages know what the Lib Dem Party do and support, they know us. They know we're out there active all the time. They know that we've worked with different, like the bands, Butterfall, the parish church. We've got £10,000 worth of legal parking fines reimbursed You know, there's a lot more we can talk about, but we've only having 45 seconds. I just want to say on the 4th of May, vote for me, and I'll continue doing what I've been doing for the last 5 years.
Thanks very much for that, Dave. And over to you, Avis, please.
Thanks. Well, over the last month, I've spoken to many Milnrow and Newhey residents I've never met or spoken before. They love living here and they appreciate living here. They're people who've got problems and issues. They're people with brilliant ideas. They're people who want to get involved and fight for what they believe in. But all of them want to be heard and all of them want to know what's going on. And none of them have any idea that Dave said they're involved in EV charging, cycle lanes. I've not heard about that, and nor have the people that I've spoken to. I am committed to listening to people and where I can, making change happen. But I know there's loads of things I won't be able to do. So I'm also committed in those circumstances to making sure that residents know that I can't do anything and explaining why. I think it's time for a change in Milnrow and Newhey. I can be that change. So vote for me. Vote for Avis Gilmore, Labour. Thank you.
Thanks, Avis. And to you, Stephen, please.
Well, I hope you found my answers genuine, positive, and on issues that have been raised this evening. I've lived in Milnrow for quite some time now, and I feel that we're treading water. There's been little or no improvement in the infrastructure, yet more and more housing is being built all over the town. I think the lack of local policing and not enough green spaces for our children and for our young adults to entertain themselves is a very disappointing reflection on the village. And I do honestly believe that the status quo is unacceptable. I think Milnrow and Newhey deserve an independent voice on the council. I do believe we should have a holistic approach to how the council works, and we should be far more sustainable, renewable and environmentally friendly. And why shouldn't Milnrow and Newhey lead the way by being the first ward ever in Rochdale to elect a Green councillor?
Okay, thank you very much for that, Stephen. So that's about our time up tonight. Thank you very much to everybody, to the three candidates in particular on screen, Dave Bamford, Avis Gilmore and Stephen Sharp. Also thanks to Richard and Yasmin in the background, who you haven't seen, but they've made this meeting here tonight possible. Just one reminder for you all, don't forget next Thursday, the 4th, is voting day. Please do go out and vote. Encourage your neighbours and friends and other members of the family to go out and vote also. It's very important that you do that. Thank you very much. Thank you to everybody. Good evening.